Hello, I have to do that, don't I? Ha 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 ha. I'm a fool to myself. I believe, let's just check. No, there. Hello, there we are. Sorry, haven't done this before in this particular way. So this should be now. Hello, welcome, hello. This is the first stream on the SPA2 channel, where we'll be doing lots of behind the scenes stuff, recording and editing and all of that sort of stuff. Today we are editing the second part of the third Sherlock Holmes book, No Scandal in Bohemia. Yes. Yes. Right. Okay. Let me just get myself organized here. I'm sorry, this is a little bit sloppy, because I haven't done this before like this, of course. I'm just going to go... I'm not expecting a huge audience for this, but just in case, I'm going to set up my phone so that I can see any chat that comes through. Just take down the tablet off the little mounty thing, and we will move the little speaker that I use so I can hear the tablet, and we're going to put the telephone on the tablet mount and then give it some power, a little bit of power. There we go. Right, and now the phone is in a place where I can see if anyone comes along to say hello. All right, so let us begin. You'll see immediately on this little waveform that there's quite a lot of background noise. That is fine. We won't be worrying. Oh dear. Oh dear, that's right. Sorry, this is a completely new install, because I was getting just constant blue screens of death on my old Windows 11 installation. So I've gone back to Windows 10, which feels a little bit primitive at this point, I don't mind saying, but it's fine. It's fine. Mute has to be Control T. Thank you. Yes, I know it was trim crop and now it is not, and that's fine. File save is Control S. Save as has to be Control Shift S or just Shift S. Save as Shift S. There we go. Yep, that's absolutely fine. Can we just remove all those other ones? Yes, thank you. So save Shift S. And oh wait, no, that should be Control S. Oh my word, it's so hard trying to remember how you used to do things. Shift S can be deleted. Save copy as Control Shift S assign. Thank you. There we go. Okay, I think that will do for the moment. There's probably some other ones, but that will do for now. Control T, vital, is mute. So insert silence, essentially. 2. There we go. See, isn't that nice? At 3 o'clock precisely. Let's just make sure you can hear that. Yes, you can hear that. No problem at all. Excellent. So we'll get rid of all that excess noise. And that should be 3 seconds, but what have we got there? Just after 1, just after 2. So we need a bit more silence, because it should be about there. Okay, great. There we go. 2. I like 3 seconds so that I can fade out the music, fade in the scene of wherever the chapter starts, and then fade it out as the narration kicks in. 3 seconds is a good amount of time for that. At 3 o'clock precisely, I was at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady... Lots of people would not bother muting that, but I'm not lots of people. I'm extremely uptight. The landlady informed me that he had left the house shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down in the morning. Some people would leave that breath in. But, as I have discussed many times on various streams, if you leave the breaths in like that, you're just lazy. You're just being lazy. Stop it. Stop it. You can leave a breath in if the character is breathing during a line and it's an important part of the performance. Like if they're out of breath or they're a bit shocked or angry or something like that, then you can leave a breath in. Other than that, all breaths must go. Okay. 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of waiting. Sometimes I'm not happy with the way I deliver a line, so I do it again. And we have to delete one of them. 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of awaiting him, however long he might be. I was already deeply... However long he might be. I was already... Long he might be. Long he might be. I was already... Turn it up. I'm going to have to kill my fans. Which sucks, because it's, well, it's summer in Japan now. And it's getting very, very warm. But I need to be able to hear slight little differences in sound. So, long he might be. We also need to do this, don't we? No, not that one. Over here, I think. No, which one is it? Oh dear, I think there's something I don't have. Ah, it's the synapse thing, isn't it? And I don't have it. Oh my. I'm going to need that. Can you hear how loud my laptop fan is? Here, let me take you over there. Bit closer. It's very, very loud. Because this is a gaming laptop thing. As well as being quite a high-powered editing machine. Because I was planning on, you know, doing a lot of 4K video editing. And I didn't end up doing much because people didn't care very much. As we were coming to Japan, I thought, hey, I'll buy myself a little GoPro that can do 4K, and I'll get myself a computer that can edit 4K, and I'll get some really cool stuff. And we did get some really cool stuff, and I spent a long time editing it together and making a little film, and no one was in the least bit interested. So there was a lot of wasted effort, and I never did it again. But I now have this laptop, which is awesome, but very, very loud. It runs hot, so hot, so hot. And its fans go churn, churn, churn all day, every day, unless you put them on like silent running, which you can only do with a bit of software that I don't have here at the moment. So that's okay. We're just going to suffer through this one and do as best a job as we can. However long he might be. I was already deeply... I was already deeply in the deep of depths. Might be. I was already deeply interested in his inquiry, for, though it was surrounded by none of the grim and strange features which were associated with the two crimes which I have already recorded, still... Now, there'll be, like, some volume differentials and stuff like that won't make the final cut. We will fix them in the next piece of software. This is just the most brutal part of the editing procedure, removing breaths, cleaning noises between spaces, and fixing the timing of everything. That's all we're doing here on this piece of software today. Which I have already recorded. Still, two crimes which I have already recorded. Still. That's a bit too big a break, isn't it? Crimes which I have already recorded. Still, The nature of the case and the exalted station of his client gave it a character of its own. Indeed, apart its own. Character of its own. Indeed, apart from the nature of the investigation which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of a situation and his key situation. Let's see if we can just get rid of that. I don't think... No, we're not going to be able to do that. Of a situation. And sometimes you can just delete a breath and it will be fine, but I think that gap is important in this case. Masterly grasp of a situation and his keen, incisive... Wait. Listen to that sentence. Which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of a situation and his key... Alright, bit too big a gap there. Yes, I am this uptight about every little bit of my audiobooks. That's why, at the risk of sounding like a bit of a tosser, that's why they sound as good as they do. Masterly grasp of a situation and his keen... There we are, much better. Made it a pleasure to me to watch his system of work and to follow the work. To watch his system of work and to follow the quick, subtle methods in which he disentangled the most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was to Lovely. All right. So, as a general rule, a full stop, like that one, gets 1 second gap, and a comma gets half a second. That's not firm and fast every time, but as a general rule of thumb, that's how it goes. The most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was I to his invariable success that the... Now, here's an interesting thing, to me anyway. So accustomed was I to... So accustomed... Before we start making actual sounds with our mouths, quite often we have a little build-up of pressure before we release. Now, if you listen to yourself, you will probably hear yourself doing it, particularly on like B's and P's. Burr, burr, purr, right? And you can delete them, and the sound is much clearer. So accustomed... Oh, no, that's no good. So that was a bad example, but we will hear better examples as we go on, I'm sure. So accustomed was I to his invariable success that the very possibility of his failing had ceased to enter into my head. It was close upon... Now, because of the shape of that statement, this might not actually be a 1 second. This might be a bit of a follow-on, a run-on sentence. Most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was I to his invariable success that the very possibility of his failing had ceased to enter into my head. It was close upon 4 before the door opened, and a drunken-looking groom, ill-kempt and side-whiskered... ill-kempt and ill... Sometimes I make myself laugh while I'm recording, and we have to get rid of that, of course. Looking groom, ill-kempt and side-whiskered, with an inflamed face and disreputable clothes, walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend... into the room. Accustomed as I was. Tricky. I do insist on all changes being smooth, and sometimes you have to pick a point like before the shape of the word actually finishes to do a nice fade. Clothes walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to... accustomed as... And there we go. Redid that whole bit. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to look as... We might just be able to delete that. In the use of disguises, I had to look... No. No, not quite, but we're probably going to be able to delete some of it. There we go. Disguises... in the use of disguises, I had to look 3 times before I was certain that it was indeed he. With a nod, indeed he. Indeed he. With a nod. Now, don't worry too much about volume variables or background noises. That will all be cleared up later. Indeed he. With a nod, he vanished into the bedroom, whence he emerged in 5 minutes, tweed-suited and respectable as of old. Putting his hands into... Right. That's full stop. Putting... There we go. That's a better example. The noises we make before we start speaking. Right? That's just before a P. It's the build-up of pressure in the mouth. Putting his hand... Absolutely unnecessary. Putting his hand... And you can delete it very happily and have a much cleaner sound on the other side. As of old. Putting his hands into his pockets, he stretched out his... Oh, bad breath. Get rid of you. His pockets, he stretched out his legs in front of the fire and laughed heartily for some minutes. I have some laughs, which I'll put in underneath in the actual edit. Oh, well, really? He cried. A little bit of a click that we have to get rid of. I do hate a click. Really? He cried, and then... okay, that'll be closer. Really? He cried, and then choked and laughed again until he was obliged to lie back, limp and helpless, in the chair. In the chair. When we come back, probably tomorrow, to put all this together and lay on the sound effects, you'll see how we take those laughs and put them under the actual line, so it sounds much better. Limp and helpless in the chair. What is it? Not a very good laugh. I might steal someone from that earlier attempt. We'll see. What is it? It's quite... What is it? What is it? It's quite... What is it? It's quite too funny. I'm sure you could never guess how I employed my morning or what I ended up doing. I can't... Not even half a second when people are talking to each other. Doing? I can't imagine. That's a bit too close. I ended up doing? I can't imagine. I suppose that you've been watching The Habits and perhaps The House of Miss Irene Adler. Oh, quite so. Okay, we'll give it half a second and see how it feels. Of Miss Irene Adler. Oh, quite so. No, see, too big. Irene Adler. Oh, quite so. But the sequel was rather unusual. I will tell you, however, that I left the house a little after 8 o'clock this morning in the character of a groom out of work. There is a wonderful sympathy and freemasonry amongst horsey men. Be one of them, and you will know all that there is to know. I soon found Bryony Lodge. It is a bijou villa with a garden at the back, but built out in front, right up to the road, 2 stories. Chubb lock on the door, large sitting room on the right side, well furnished, with long windows almost to the floor, and those preposterous English window fasteners which a child could open. Behind, there was nothing remarkable, save that the passage window could be reached from the top of the coach house. I walked round it and examined it closely from every point of view, but without noting anything else of interest. I then... Japanese air is not very clean, I have to say. And it builds up a lot of gunk while I'm recording, and I have to clear my throat quite often. Speaking of which, today is the worst air quality I've seen since we got here. It's absolutely terrible. I've got the whole house sealed and the air filter running full bore on the other side of the room. Anything else of interest? I then lounged down the street without noting anything else of interest. I then lounged down the street and found, as I expected, that there was a mews in a lane which runs down by one wall of the garden. I lent the ostlers a hand in rubbing the garden. That breath is not necessary. 'Tis not necessary, so you'll get rid of it. I lent of the garden. Of the garden. Of the garden. I lent the ostlers a hand in rubbing down their horses, and received in exchange twopence, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Adler, to say nothing of half a dozen other people in the neighbourhood in whom I was not in the least interested, but whose biographies I was compelled to listen to. And what of I... Okay. Watson answering back. We give it the half-second break, but we'll probably have to trim it. To listen to. And... See, it sounds brutal so far, some of these edits, don't they? To listen to. And what of Irene Adler? I asked. But they will be cleared up, I promise you. It will sound much better by the time we get to the end. Irene Adler? I asked. Irene Adler? I asked. No, she... So, what do you think of the thrill-a-minute live editing streams? Pretty exciting, eh? Irene Adler, I asked. No. Irene Adler, I asked. No, she has turned all the men's heads down in that part. She is the daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet, or so say the serpentine muse to a man. She lives quietly, man. To a man. To a man. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out at 5 every day and returns at 7 sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times for dinner. Up for dinner. Sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times except when she sings. Has only one male visitor, but a good deal of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing, never called... of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing, never calls less than once a day, and often twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton of... Twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton of the Inner Temple. See the advantages of a cabman as a confidant. They had driven him home a dozen times from Serpentine Mews and knew all about him. When I had listened to all about him, when I had listened to all they had to tell, I began to walk up and down near Bryony Lodge once more, and to think over my plan of campaign. Now this, find my working. There we go. All the projects I'm working on at the moment. Part 2 working. Edit A, save, yes. And then we save a copy. Ah, wait. We've done that, haven't we? Let's just check our keyboards here. File. Save copy as Control-Shift-S. Okay. Alright. Ah! There we go. That's what we did. That should be Control-S. Assign. There we are. Lovely. Okay. So that should just... Boom. Brutal. And then that... B for backup. Open it in a separate tab. There we are. Lovely. Chambers. And that's how we make sure we don't lose any work. Although I did do nearly 5 minutes of work before bothering to save, and that is just suicidal. Chambers in the temple. attention to the gentlemen's chambers in the temple. It was a delicate point. In the temple. It was a delicate point, and it widened the field of my inquiry. I fear that I bore you with these details, but I have to let you see my little difficulties if you are to understand the situation. Oh, I am following you closely. Understand the situation. Oh, I am following you closely. Situation. Oh, I am following you closely, I answered. Closely. I am following you closely, I answered. I was still balancing the matter. Give that a full second. Let's see. Closely, I answered. I was still... No, that's way too long. Following you closely, I answered. I was still balancing the matter in my mind when a hansom cab drove up to Bryony Lodge and a gentleman sprang out. He was a remarkable... sprang out. He sprang out. He was a remarkably handsome man, dark, aquiline, and mustached, evidently the man of whom I had heard. He appeared to be in a great... He appeared to be in a great hurry, shouted to the cabman to wait, and brushed past the maid who opened the door with the air of a man who was thoroughly at home. He was in the house about half an hour, and I could catch glimpses of him in the windows of the sitting room, pacing up and down, talking excitedly and waving his arm. Pacing up and down, and I could catch glimpses of him in the windows of the sitting room, pacing up and down, talking, pacing up and down, talking excitedly and waving his arm. Windows of the sitting room, pacing up and down, talking excitedly and waving his arms. Of her, I could see nothing. Presently, he could see nothing. Presently, he emerged, looking even more flurried than before. As he stepped up to the cab, he pulled a gold watch from his pocket and looked at it earnestly. "Drive like the devil," he shouted. "First to Gross and Henkey's in Regent Street, and then to the Church of St. Monica in the Edgware Road. Half a guinea if you do it in 20 minutes. And away they went. I was just wondering whether I should not do well to follow them, when up the lane came a little landau. I was just wondering whether I do it in 20 minutes. And away they went. Away they went. Away they went. And I was just wondering away they went. Away they went. You get used to seeing what your recording patterns look like in wave form, and sometimes you can just tell, oh, I had a few cracks at this line, and we're going to have to cut some of them out, like I did just then. If you do it in 20 minutes. Away they went, and I was just wondering whether I should not do well to follow them, when up the lane came a neat little landau, the coachman with his coat only half buttoned, and his tie under his ear, while all the tags of his harness were sticking out of the buckles. I hadn't pulled up before... out of the buckles. I hadn't... buckles. It hadn't pulled up... The mistake, see? Was sticking out of the buckles. It hadn't pulled up before she shot out of the hall door and into it. I only caught a glimpse of her at the moment, but she was a lovely woman, with a face that a man might die for. "The Church of St. Monica," that a man might die for. "The Church of St. Monica, John," she cried, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. This was quite too good to lose, Watson. I was just balancing whether I should run for it or whether I should perch behind her landau when a cab came through the street. The driver looked twice at such a shabby fare, but I jumped in before he could object. "The Church of St. Monica," said I, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. It was 25 minutes to 12, and of course it was clear enough what was Oh. It was 25 minutes to... It was 25 minutes... It was 25 minutes to 12, and of course, it was... If you reach it in 20 minutes... It was 25 minutes to 12, and of course, it was clear enough what was in the wind. My cabbie drove fast. I don't... It was in the wind. My cabbie drove fast. I don't think I ever drove faster, but the others were there before us. The cab and the landau with the steaming horses were in front of the door when I... The cab and the landau with the steaming horses were in front of the door when I... The cab...
Yes.
Before us. The cab and the landau with the steaming horses were in front of the door when I arrived. I paid the man and hurried into the church. There was not a soul there, save the two whom I had followed and a surpliced clergyman, who seemed to be expostulating.
This might be tricky.
Clergyman, who seemed to be
No,
expostulating.
it's fine. Good.
They were all three standing. They were all with them. They were all three standing in a knot in front of the altar. I lounged up the side aisle like any other idler who's dropped into a church. Suddenly, to my surprise, the three at the altar faced round to me, and Godfrey Norton came running as hard as he could towards me. "Thank God!" he cried. "You'll do. Come, come." What then?" I asked. "You'll do. Come, come." "You'll do. Come, come." What then?" I asked. "Then?" I asked. "Where is that Sherlock?" What then?" I asked. "Where is that Sherlock?" I think
No.
Sherlock. "What then?" I asked. "Come, man, come. Only 3 minutes or it won't be legal." "What then?" I asked. "You'll do. Come, come." What then?" I asked. "Come, man, come. Only... come." Then I asked. "Come, man, come. Only 3 minutes or it won't be legal." Huh? I was half dragged up the... Illegal. Huh? Or it won't be legal. Huh? I was half dragged up the altar, and before I knew where I was, I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear.
Yeah, do that again.
I was half dragged up to the altar.
All right. Okay.
I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was, I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was found... I was half dragged up to the...
Idiot, Stephen. Sometimes your tongue does not do what you want it to do.
I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was, I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear, and vouching for things of which I knew nothing, and generally assisting in the secure tying up of Irene Adler, spinster, to Godfrey Norton, bachelor. It was all done in an instant. Norton, bachelor. It was all done in an instant, and there was the gentleman thanking me on the one side and the lady on the other, whilst the clergyman beamed on me in front. It was the most preposterous position in which I ever found myself in my life, and it was the thought of it that started me laughing just now. It seems that there had been some informality about their license, that the clergyman absolutely refused to marry them without a witness of some sort, and that my lucky appearance saved the bridegroom from having to sally out into the streets in search of a best man. The bride gave me a sovereign, and I mean to wear it on my watch chain in memory of the occasion. That.
Right. Now we have Watson replying.
And we'll do that quite quickly.
The occasion. That is a very unexpected turn of affairs, said I. And occasion.
No, I might delete that little scoff because I don't think it works.
Occasion. That is a very unexpected turn of affairs, said. Turn of affairs. Unexpected turn of affairs, said I. And affairs, said I. And what then? Well,
Mute. Fade.
what then?
Trim.
What then? Well, I found my plans very seriously menaced. It looked as if the pair might take an immediate departure, and so necessitate very prompt and energetic measures on my part. At the church door, however, they separated, he driving back to the temple, and she to her own house. I shall drive out in the park at 5 as usual, she said, as she left him. I heard no more. They drove away in different directions, and I went off to make my own arrangements.
Jolly good. Now let's do a quick safety save. And safety backup save. There we are, lovely.
Off to make my own arrangements. Which are? To make my own arrangements. Which are?
A little bit.
Off to make my own arrangements. Which are? Some cold beef and a glass of beer, he answered, ringing. Some cold.
Yes, we'll get rid of all of that nonsense.
Some cold. Which are? Some cold beef and a glass
There
of
we
beer,
go.
he answered, ringing the bell. Beer, he answered, ringing. It's a beer, he answered, ringing the bell. I've been too the bell.
Listen to all that background noise. Isn't that awful? But we'll get rid of that all in the next pass.
Ringing the bell.
It'll be fine, trust me.
Ringing the bell. I've been too busy to think of food, and I'm likely to be busier still this evening. By the way, Doctor, I shall want your cooperation. I shall be delighted. You don't mind?
Not you.
Your cooperation. I shall be delighted. You don't mind breaking the law? Not in the least. Nor
Break at the lower, break at the lower.
not in the least. Nor running a chance of arrest. Not in a good cause. Oh, the cause is good cause. Oh, the cause is excellent. Well, then I am your man. Is excellent. Well, then I am your man. Oh, the cause is excellent. Well, then I am your man. I was sure that I might rely on you. But what? Sure that I might rely on you. But what is it you wish? When?
To try and keep a rhythm when you have two characters talking to each other, try and keep the gaps about the same all the way through. It just gives it a smoothness and believability.
But what is it you wish? When Mrs. Turner has brought in the tray, I'll make it clear to you. Now, he said as he turned hungrily on the simple fare that our landlady had provided. I must discuss while I eat. That our landlady had provided. I must discuss while I eat, for I have not much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must be on the scene of action. Miss Irene, or Madame, rather, returns from her drive at 7. We must be at Bryony Lodge to meet her. And what then? Must be at
Sorry, little acting moments that I sometimes enjoy listening to. This is Sherlock speaking while eating, of course.
I must discuss while I eat, for I have not much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must be on the scene.
Not sure about that. That's a bit of a piggy noise, isn't it? That's not so good. We'll get rid of that one.
It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must... Nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must be on the scene of action. Miss Irene, or Madame, rather, returns from her drive at 7. We must be at Bryony Lodge to meet her. And what then? You must leave that to me. And what then? You must leave that to me. I have already arranged what is to occur. There is only one point on which I must insist. You must not interfere, come what may. You understand? I am... Come what may. You understand? I am to be neutral. To do nothing whatsoever. To do nothing whatever. There will probably be... To do nothing whatsoever.
Now, the timing of that is excellent.
To be neutral. To do nothing whatsoever.
Does it matter that the script says whatever rather than whatsoever?
To do nothing whatever. There will probably...
I mean, it probably doesn't matter. I can probably just delete that there and it'll be fine, right?
I am to be neutral. To do nothing whatever. There will probably be some small
Yes, that's fine.
unpleasantness. Do not join in. It will end in my being conveyed into the house. 4 or 5 minutes afterwards, the sitting room window will open. You are to station yourself close to that open window. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I try in general to stay as close as I can to the original script. I do occasionally make little changes, but I try not to as a general rule. Although, if I was recording Huckleberry Finn, for example, a certain character would just be called Jim. If I were to record it, I would not use his the epithet he's given in the book. Things like that I will change for sure. Yeah.
Yourself close to that open window. Yes. You are to watch me, for I will be visible to you. Yes. For I will be visible to you. Yes. And when I raise my hand, so, you will throw into the room what I give you to throw, and will at the same time raise the cry of fire. You quite follow me? You quite follow me? You quite follow me? Of fire. You quite follow me? You quite follow me? Entirely. It is nothing very familiar. Entirely. It is nothing very familiar.
Another little tip. In general, you're better off deleting the middle of a gap rather than starting from the end of a word or the start of the next word. It's just, that's where all the noise tends to happen. And it'll sound much more natural if you can keep the start and end of the phrase clean.
You quite follow me? Entirely. It is nothing very formidable, he said, taking a long... Formidable, he said, taking a long cigar-shaped roll from his pocket. It is an ordinary... From his pocket. It is an ordinary plumber's... From his pocket. It is an ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. Your task is confined to that. When you raise your cry of fire, it will be taken up by quite a number of people. You may then walk to the end of the street, and I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope that I have made myself clear.
Why did plumbers carry little explosives around in their pocket? Could they not just plunge? I suppose if you don't have a rotor-rooter, right, and the blockage is particularly bad, and you live in Victorian England, you might have a little explosive instead.
I am to hope that I have made myself clear. that I've made myself clear? I am to remain neutral, to get near the window, to watch you, and at the signal to throw in this object, then to raise the cry of fire, and to wait you at the corner of the street. Precisely. Then you may rely in... Then... of the street. Precisely. Then you may rely entirely on me. Then you... Then you... of the street. Precisely. Then you may entirely rely on me. That is excellent. Entirely rely on me. That is excellent. I think perhaps it is almost time that I prepare for the new role I have to play.
I think that's the end of the scene, isn't it?
Oh, I forgot the thing, didn't I?
Ah, there you go. I've just realized that I didn't quiet down the fan.
Performance. There we go. Calm down, fan. Dang it! I forgot that bit. That's all right. I can... He disappeared into his bedroom.
Yeah. 5 years into this job, or so, and I still forget little bits.
New role I have to play. He disappeared into his bedroom and returned in a few minutes in the character of an amiable and simple-minded, nonconformist clergyman. His broad black...
You will hear, though, immediately the background noise is nowhere near as bad once I turn that fan off.
Nonconformist clergyman. His broad... Nonconformist clergyman.
In the old days, I would have at that point started again with the recording, but now my software is a lot better, and I'm confident that I can clean that up.
Nonconformist clergyman. His
How are we
broad
doing?
black hat,
About
his
half
baggy
done.
trousers, his white tie, his sympathetic smile, and general look of peering and benevolent curiosity was such as Mr. John Hare alone could have equalled. It was not merely...
John Hare was quite a famous Victorian actor in London, and playwright, I think, as well.
alone could have equalled. It was not merely that Holmes changed his costume, his expression, his manner, his changed his costume, his expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with each fresh part he had assumed. Ah, dang it. His very soul seemed to... His expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with... To vary...
That looks like the point.
His very soul seemed to vary...
Yes. At the start of the T.
Seemed to vary... Seemed to...
When you're looking for edit points, look for those nice hard consonants. B, P, T, D. And S, strangely. S is excellent. You can cut right in the middle of one S and halfway through the next S, and no one will ever hear the gap. It's amazing. S. It's perfect. It's a perfect sound. Anyway.
Expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with each fresh...
I could have done it there.
Soul seemed...
Here, I'll show you. I'm sure you're thrilled.
Very soul vary with each fresh part.
Oh, I'd already deleted it.
His very soul...
There we go, right in the middle of that S. That S?
His manner, his very soul...
There we are, in the middle of that S. From S to S.
His manner, his very soul seemed to vary with
See?
each fresh part that he assumed.
You can't hear it at all, right? Amazing. Took me quite a while to discover that one.
Fresh part that he assumed. The stage lost a fine actor, even as science lost an acute reasoner when he became a specialist in crime. It was 6:15 when we left Baker Street, and it still wanted 10 minutes. Left Baker Street, and it still wanted 10 minutes to the hour when we found ourselves in Serpentine Avenue. It was already in Serpentine Avenue. It was already dusk, and the lamps were just being lighted as we paced up and down in front of Bryony Lodge, waiting for the coming of its occupant. Waiting for the coming. Waiting. Lodge, waiting for the coming of its occupant.
The narrator never breathes. Only characters can breathe.
Of its occupant. The house was just such as I had pictured it from Sherlock Holmes' succinct description, but the locality. Succinct description. But the locality appeared to be less private. But the locality appeared to be less private than I expected. On the contrary, for a small street in a quiet neighborhood, it was remarkably animated.
Oh, 1 second for a full stop, and we'll see if we need it.
Animated. There was a group of shabbily
Trim a little bit.
remarkably animated. There was a group of shabbily dressed men smoking and laughing in a corner. A scissors grinder and laughing in a corner. A scissors grinder with his and laughing in a corner. A scissors grinder with his wheel. 2 guardsmen who were flirting with a nurse girl, and several and several well-dressed young men who were lounging up and down with cigars in their mouths. You see. In their mouths.
Alrighty. Safety saves, gotta be safe, and you've got to save. I try and remember to do it once a minute or so. Because this old brutal software that I use, if we have a look about this, look at that, 2017. It's quite old, this software, and they've released several new versions since this one. And I've bought some of them, but I don't like them as much as this one for this job. It's beautiful for this job, and only this job, nothing else.
With cigars in their mouths. You see.
You think that's bad? I have an old copy of Sound Booth from 2007, I think it is, that I just keep for one sound effect, which it does better than any other software I've ever come across. If you want the sound of a voice coming through an old radio or a telephone, that is the software. It is the best.
And down with cigars in their mouths. You see, remarked Holmes as we You see, remarked Holmes as we paced to and fro in front of the house. This marriage in front of the house. We paced to and fro in front of the house. This marriage rather simplifies matters. The photograph becomes a double-edged weapon now. The photograph becomes a paced to and fro in front of the house. This marriage rather simplifies matters. The photograph becomes a double-edged weapon now. The chances are that she would have weapon now. The chances are that
a little bit of an error there, Stevie Weavy.
double-edged weapon now. The chances are that she would be as averse to its being seen by Mr. Godfrey Norton as our client is to its coming to the eyes of his princess. Now, the question is, where are we to find the photograph? Where indeed? The photograph. Where? The photograph. Where indeed? It is most unlikely. Where indeed? It is. Where indeed? It is most unlikely that she carries it about with her. It is cabinet size, too large for easy concealment. It is out with her. It is cabinet size, too large for easy concealment about a woman's dress. She knows that the king is capable of having her waylaid and searched. 2 attempts of the sort have already been made. We may take it, then, that she does not carry it about with her. Oh, where, then? Oh, does not carry it about with her. Oh, where, then? Oh, about with her. Oh, where, then?
I was chatting with Tim Williams, who played O'Brien in 1984 and is currently working on 80 Days around the world in 80 days, rather. And saying, I wish I had thought when I started doing these Sherlock books to have him read the part of Sherlock Holmes. It would have been it would have worked quite well. Yeah. Anyway,
Not carry it,
too late now. I'm in the middle of book 3. Oh well.
not carry it about with her. Oh, where, then? Her banker or her lawyer, there is that double possibility, but I am inclined to think neither. This lady is naturally secretive and likely likes to do her own secreting. Why should she hand it over to anybody else? She could trust her own guardianship, but she could not tell what indirect or political influence might be brought to bear upon a business influence might be brought to bear
It's not often I do it on an M, but all right, let's see.
or political influence might be brought to bear
No, see, that's too rough.
influence might be brought to bear
Brought is a good one.
political influence might be brought to bear upon a businessman. Besides, remember that she has resolved to use it within a few days. It must be where she can lay her hands upon it. It must be in her own house. But it has twice been burnt. In her own house. But it has twice been burgled. Sure, they do not know how to look. How to look. But how will you look? I will not look. What then? Look. I will not look. What then? What then? I will get. What then? I will get her to show me. But she will. To show me. But she will refuse. She will refuse. She will not be able to. But
Make a bit of a breath. Have to get rid of that.
refuse. She will not be able to. But I hear the rumble of wheels. It is her carriage. Now carry out my orders to the letter. As he spoke,
1 to 130. There we go. Draw a cord.
orders to the letter. As he spoke, the gleam of the sidelights of a carriage came round the curve of the avenue. It was round the curve of the avenue. It was a smart little landau which rattled up to the door of Bryony Lodge. As it pulled As it pulled up, one of the loafing men at the corner dashed forward. As it pulled up, one of the loafing men at the corner dashed forward to open the door in the hopes of earning a copper, but was elbowed.
Comma half a second. There we go. Might even be shorter than that. We'll see.
In the hopes of earning a copper, but was
Yes, much shorter.
opened the door in the hopes of earning a copper, but was elbowed away by another loafer who had rushed up. But was elbowed away. In the hopes of earning a copper, but was elbowed away by another loafer who had rushed up with the same intention. A fierce quarrel broke out, which was increased by the two guardsmen who took sides with one of the loungers, and by the scissors grinder, who was equally hot upon the other side. A blow equally hot upon the other side. Equally hot upon the other side. A blow was struck, and in an instant the lady, who had stepped from the carriage, was the centre of a carriage was the center of the carriage was the center of a little knot of flushed and struggling men who struck savagely at each other with their fists and sticks. Holmes dashed into the crowd to protect the lady, but just as
tricky one. I don't like that. I don't like that. This is going to take a bit of smoothing.
Protect the lady.
Oh.
But just as he reached her,
Oh, that's fine. Actually, that was really easy. Okay, great.
The lady. But just as he reached her, he gave a cry and dropped to the ground with the blood running freely down his face. At his fall,
I should have given a little cry there. Shouldn't I?
Running freely down his face.
Oh, blimey, my face! It's all bloody now. You know, something like that. Something believable and subtle.
Running freely down his face. At his fall, the guardsmen took to their heels in one direction and the loungers in the other, while a number of better dressed people who had watched the scuffle without taking part in it crowded in to help the lady and to attend to the injured man. Irene Adler, as I will still call her, had hurried up the steps, but she stood at the top with her superb figure outlined against the lights of the hall, looking back into the street.
Okay. Now, this might seem really slow and agonizing, but we're actually making really good time with this edit. Lots of it was narration of, not narration, dialogue, of course, which is fairly easy to record when it's done in this style, because I can alternate between Watson, who I've given my natural voice to make it nice and easy, and Sherlock Holmes, who has this voice and is quite easy for me to go into. You can edit between it really easily. When we have really complicated voices, I record them on a separate file, of course, and then it gets much more difficult to blend everything together. Poor old Matche, who had to edit Dracula. If I showed you the files that he had to work with, for some of those chapters, there's 6 or 7 different characters, and he has to clean up all the lines and then put them all together. It was a heck of a job. Heck of a job.
Lined against the lights of the hall, looking back into the street. Is the poor gentleman hurt much? Back into the street. Is the poor gentleman hurt much? She asked. He asked. He's dead, cried several voices. No, there's life in him, shouted another. But he'll be gone before you can... shouted another. But he'll be gone before you can get him to hospital. He's a brave fellow. You can get him to hospital.
I don't have many female voices in my repertoire.
To hospital.
You will hear this woman a lot in my books.
He's a brave fellow, said a woman. They would have had the lady's purse and much... said a woman. They would have had the lady's purse and much... Oh, this is a very silly voice. They would... Silly voice.
It is a very silly voice.
They would have...
but I don't. As I said, I don't have many. It was one of the things that really drove me to try and get other actors on staff, was the fact that I cannot do women's voices, I cannot do children's voices.
"Hey, fellow," said a woman.
Let's trim that, make it a bit tighter.
"Fellow," said a woman.
And see if we can do the little break.
"Fellow," said a woman.
No matter how small that break is, if you can mute between one character and another, it makes it, again, far more believable, even when one of the voices is this silly.
"Brave fellow," said a woman. "They would have had the ladies. They would." "Brave fellow," said a woman. "They would have had the ladies." Said a woman.
And little completely pointless building up of the pressure in the mouth before the sound, as we've spoken about many times.
"Brave fellow," said a woman. "They would have had the lady's purse and watch if it hadn't been for him. They were a gang, and a rough one too. Oh, he's breathing now. He can't lie in the..."
Oh
he's
dear.
breathing now.
Wait, there's a little click. Ah. Hear that click? I cannot abide a click. I hate clicks.
"Breathing now. He can't lie in the street. May we bring him in, ma'am?" "Sure." "Bring him in, ma'am." "Ma'am." "Surely, bring him into the sitting room. There is a comfortable sofa. This way, please." Slowly and... "This way, please." Slowly and solemnly. "This way, please." Slowly and... "Sofa. This way, please." Slowly and solemnly, he was borne into Bryony Lodge and laid out in the principal room, while I still observed by the window in the principal room, while I still in the principal room, while I still observed the principal room, while I still observed the proceedings from my post by the window.
I had a young fellow come along to watch one of my editing sessions once, and with shock he was like, "Oh, so you don't just read it that perfectly, you edit yourself." And I was like, "Yeah, of course." I promise you've never seen a TV show or a commercial or a film that was not edited really, really heavily. This is how acting is done in this age. Unless you're watching your actors live on stage, this is how it's done.
From my post by the window. The lamps had been lit, but the blinds had not been drawn, so that I could see Holmes as he lay upon the couch. I do not...
My own sister had the same reaction when she realized I edited everything. Like, of course I do. Good Lord.
Holmes as he...
I'm a perfectionist. You think I wouldn't edit everything? Come on now.
Holmes as he lay upon the couch. I do not know whether he was seized with compunction at that moment for
Wait.
so that I could see Holmes as he lay upon the couch. I do not know whether
I think I redid this.
I do not know
Yes, I remember.
I do not know whether he was seized with compunction at that moment for the part he was playing, but I know that I part he was playing, but I know that I never felt more heartily ashamed of myself in my life than when I saw that beautiful creature. Then when I saw that beautiful creature against whom I was then when I saw that beautiful myself in my life, then when I saw that beautiful creature against whom I was conspiring, or the grace and kindliness, conspiring, or the conspiring,
Oop.
conspiring, or the grace and
Yes.
kindliness with which she waited upon the injured man. And yet, he waited upon the injured man. And yet, she waited upon the injured man. And yet, it would be the blackest treachery to Holmes to draw back now from the part which he had entrusted to me. I hardened my... entrusted to me. I hardened my heart which he had entrusted to me. I hardened my heart and took the smoke rocket from under my ulster. After all, under my ulster. After all, I thought, we are not injuring her. We are but we are not injuring her. We are but preventing her from... We are not injuring her. We are but preventing her from injuring another.
There are a bunch of little tricks that I don't know why they work, but they do. And that is one of them. If the end of the edit sounds a bit hard,
Injuring her.
right?
Injuring her.
That cuts off quite quickly, doesn't it?
Injuring her.
You can bring the next line closer, and it will help smooth that hard edit.
We are not injuring her. We are but preventing her from injuring another.
I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm sure someone who's been trained in the arts could tell you, but I have not been. I'm entirely self-taught, which is why I do everything, I'm sure, in the hardest possible way. And probably the worst possible way as well. Oh well.
Injuring another. Holmes had sat up upon the couch, and I saw him motion like a man who is in need of air. Is in need of air. A maid rushed across and threw open the window. At the same instant, At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the signal, I tossed my rocket into the room. At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the signal, I tossed the signal.
I like the start of this line better than when I redid it.
At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the signal.
This should be fine.
Him raise his hand, and at the signal, I tossed my rocket into the room with a cry of fire. The word
Lovely.
into the room with a cry of fire. The word was no sooner out. The cry of fire. The word was no sooner out of my mouth than the whole crowd of spectators, well dressed and ill, gentlemen and ill, gentlemen, ostlers, and servant maids joined in the general shriek of fire. Thick cloud. Shriek of fire! Fire! Thick clouds of smoke coaled through the room and out of the open window. I caught a glimpse of rushing figures, and a moment later the voice of Holmes from within assuring them that it was a false alarm. Slipping through the false alarm. Slipping through the shouting false alarm. Slipping through the shouting crowd, I made my way to the corner of the street, and in 10 minutes to the corner of the street, and in 10 minutes was rejoiced to find my friend's arm in mine, and to get away from the scene of the uproar. He walks scene of the uproar.
18 minutes. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. We've been really, really roaring through this quite quickly. I don't think we've even been editing for an hour yet, have we? Look how much we've done. That's awesome. We should finish this before lunch. That'd be great.
Scene of the uproar.
I've got quite a lot of other less fun work to do this afternoon. Dealing with lawyers. Yay! I hate lawyers. I hate lawyers. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. They're just people doing a job, but dear gods, I hate them with a burning passion.
Arm in mine, and to get away from the scene of the uproar. He walked swiftly and in silence for some minutes until we had turned down one of the quiet streets which led towards the Edgware Road. You did it. Where road? Where road? You did it very nicely, Doctor, he remarked. Nicely, Doctor, he remarked. Nothing could have been better. Very nicely, Doctor, he remarked. Nothing could have been better. It is all right. You have the... It is all right. You have the photograph. I know where the photograph. I know where it is. And how... I know where it is. And I know where it is. And how did you find out? She showed me. She showed me, as I told you she would. I told you she would. I told you she would. I am still in the dark. I do not wish to... In the dark. I'm still in the dark. I do not wish to make a mystery. I do not wish to make a mystery, he said. Said he, laughing. I do not wish to make a mystery. I do not wish to make a mystery. Mystery. Wish to make a mystery, said he, laughing. To make a mystery, said he, laughing. The matter was, said he, laughing. The matter was perfectly simple. That you, of course, saw that everyone in the street was an accomplice. They were all engaged for the evening. I guessed. For the evening. For the evening. I guessed as much. Then, when the... engaged for the evening. I guessed as much. Then, when the row broke out, I had a little moist... Then, when the row broke out, I had a little moist red paint in the palm of my hand. I rushed forward, fell down, clapped my hand to my face, and became a piteous spectacle. It is an old trick. That also...
It is an old trick. They used to use it in films and on stage all the time. I can't actually imagine it working in real life, though, right? Paint doesn't actually look like blood. Anyway, who knows?
It is an old trick. That also I could fathom. They... It's an old trick. That also I could fathom. Then they carried me in. She was bound to have me in. What else could she do? And into her sitting room, which was the very room which I suspected, it lay between the... And into her sit... What else could she do? Was bound to have me in. What else could she do? And into her sitting room, which was the very room which I suspected. It lay between that and her bed. They laid me on a couch. It lay between that and her... It lay between that and her bedroom, and I was determined to see which. They laid me on a couch. I motioned for air. They were compelled to open the window, and you had your chance. But how did that help you? Your chance. You had your chance. But how did that help you? Oh, it was all important. or chance. But how did that help you? How did that help you? Oh, it was all important. When someone thinks that their house is on fire, their instinct is at once to rush to the thing that they value most. It is a perfectly overpowering impulse, and I have more than once taken advantage of it. I have more than once taken advantage of it. I have more than once taken advantage of it. In the case of the Darlington... And I have more than once taken advantage of it. In the case of the Darlington substitution scandal, it was of use to me, and also in the Amsworth Castle business. A married woman grasps at her baby, an unmarried one reaches for her jewel box. Now it was clear to me that Our Lady of today had nothing in the house more precious to her than what we are in quest of. She would rush to secure it. She would are in quest of. She would rush to secure.
I don't think that breath is important.
In quest of. In quest of. She would rush to secure it. The alarm of fire was admirably done. The smoke and shouting were enough to shake nerves of steel. She responded beautifully. The photograph is in a recess behind a sliding panel just above the right bell pull. She was there in an instant, and I caught a glimpse of it as she half drew it out. When I cried out that it was a false alarm, she replaced it, glanced at the rocket, rushed across the room, and I have not seen her since. I rose and, making my excuses, escaped. I have not seen her since. I rose and, making my excuses, escaped from the house. I hesitated whether to attempt to secure the photograph at once, but the coachman, I hesitated. I rose and, making my excuses, I hesitated and, making my excuses, escaped from the house. I hesitated. Excuses, escaped from the house. And, making my excuses, escaped.
Nearly done.
I hesitated whether to attempt to secure the photograph at once, but the coachman had come in, and as he was watching me narrowly, it seemed safer to wait. A little over-precipitance may ruin all. And now, I asked. May ruin all. May ruin all. And now, I asked. And now, I asked. And now, I asked. Now, I asked. Our quest is practically finished. I shall call with the king tomorrow, and with you, if you care to come with us. We will be shown into the sitting room to wait for the lady, but it is probable that when she comes, she may find neither us nor the photograph. It may be a satisfaction to His Majesty to regain it with his own hands. And when will you call? His own hands. His own hands. And when will you call? At 8 in the morning. When will you call? At 8 in the morning. She will not be up, so that we shall have a clear field. Besides, we must be prompt, for this marriage may mean a complete change in her life and habits. I must wire to the king without delay. We had reached Baker. King without delay. We had reached Baker Street and had stopped at the door. He was stopped at the door. He was searching his pockets for the key when someone passing said, "Good." Someone passing said, "Good night, Mrs. When someone passing said, "Good night, Mrs. Sherlock Holmes." Sherlock Holmes. There were several people on the pavement at the time, but the greeting appeared to come from on the pavement at the time, but the greeting There were several people on the pavement at the time, but the greeting appeared to come from a slim youth.
See, there's a good point. That build-up of pressure that we've been talking about all the way through, it only happens when it's the first sound. If it's in the middle of a sentence, it can completely ruin the sound of the sentence.
On the pavement at the time, but the greeting appeared to come
You have
from
to
a slim
delete it.
youth in an ulster who had hurried by. Hurried by. I've heard that voice before. Ulster who had hurried by. Hurried by. I've heard that voice before, said Holmes, staring down the dimly lit street. Now I wonder who the deuce that dimly lit street. Down the dimly lit street. Now I wonder who the deuce that could have been. Who the deuce that could have been.
Yes, there we go. That is the end. Lovely. The Master Edit, Part 2, Book 3, done, complete. Excellent, excellent. All copied, saved, ready to work next time. Now we'll come back tomorrow, and we'll do the cleaning up of the sound, removing background noises. We'll also add, music and sound effects and all of that sort of thing, and export it, ready to finish this third book next week. It's a very unevenly written book. Chapter 3 is much shorter than Part 1, Part 2. It's only a 3-parter. Nonetheless, thank you for coming along. I hope you have enjoyed this, found it interesting. And yes, we'll continue to do more streams. All of the behind-the-scenes work and stuff will happen on this channel in the future. And the other channel, Steve Stuff, will have all the gaming things. Thank you once again. I hope you've had fun. We'll see you next time. Bye.